Hello there. Welcome back to my channel, Snips by Kelly. I'm Kelly, and tonight's layout focuses on making unique icons work for your everyday themes. So we have a brand new online exclusive that's dropping on November 1st called Otterly Adorable and Otterly Amazing. It comes in a suite collection, or you can get all the pieces separately. So you have the Otterly Amazing dies, or the Otterly Amazing stamp set, or they can be purchased together. There's so many interesting dies in this set, like this one that I'm holding here makes slices in your paper so that the otters can nestle into the paper and look like they're coming out of the water. Several of these dies cut the otters and pieces right out of the background pattern papers. There's lots of flourishes, leaves, stones, and fish, and other parts and pieces that go with the Otterly Adorable collection. But there are so many hero papers in this set. We're very used to having really like one hero paper or one busy theme specific paper per workshop, and there are tons. There are otters, so many otters. And my paper crafters absolutely loved the cuteness of it. They loved the color scheme, but they were like, what am I going to do with it? It's cute, but we got the big but there. It's cute, but the Sweet collection comes with some irregular riverside pearls that look like river stones, some Lost Lagoon soft cord, and all of these otters. So there is a busy hero paper and then a softer side of each. There's even this large scene where you can have the whole scene filled with the otters and the riverbank. There's lots of flourishes and different river life. There's river rocks, and it has a very family vibe to it, with a baby otter, a mama otter, and a daddy otter, or the family of otters. There are so many coordinating colors with this set, and those that they listed are, but are not limited to, balmy blue, basic gray, calypso coral, crumb cake, early espresso, garden green, gray granite, lemon lime twist, Lost Lagoon, old olive, pecan pie, pool party, and pretty peacock. So many that it's overwhelming. So I decided to pull out different sets. So pulling out one busy pattern with its coordinating muted tone, and finding 2 or 3 patterns or cardstocks that go with just those helped me to really sort out those busy patterns in my head. So you can see here that picking 2 or 3 or 4 cardstocks per busy pattern and per the opposite side really helps sort out your layouts that you could possibly create. Also, not overthinking, not overthinking that you have to have otters. So I've chosen this photo of my son Zachary and his wife MJ, and they are actually at the dam, and they're sitting among some large stones. There's no actual, there might be a tiny bit of water you can see in the background, but I don't think so. And they're not actually on the water, in the water. There's no otters, but I've pulled out those things that I think go with their shirts, their jeans, the stones in the background, and those colors that I think coordinate with each other. Even MJ's shirt has a little bit of coral. It's a little bit of a brighter pink, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to incorporate that, but I wanted one busy and one more muted pattern for the layout. So I've actually created this dot stitched frame at 10 inches on the Cricut, and I created it in very vanilla, and then a 10 1/4 by 10 1/4 early espresso piece to put over the busy flourish background. And my vision is to do a little tearing and make a river scene running through it, a river running through it. Now, I'm not exactly sure which which kind of marbly pattern I'm going to use. And the designer of this series actually shared that she used a shaving cream method to actually create those patterns, that she got messy with watercolors and shaving cream and created those backgrounds. And then, of course, the art gets photographed and turned into paper. So it's actually quite an interesting story. And I will link in the description the video of how this series came about. But I'm going to gut this frame 1 inch to 11 inches all the way around so that I can conserve the wash marbly interior. I'm going to put the 10 1/4 by 10 1/4 early espresso and the dot overlay in the center of that. Now I'm going to give you a hint that I actually end up changing the Very Vanilla to white. Now Very Vanilla, I believe, was a coordinating color in this, but I felt like the white lent itself better. And I'm just going to tear off a corner of it, the Very Vanilla right now, but I change it in a little while here to white, same exact size, same pattern. And I'm going to just take a chunk out of the center, about 2 inches, 1.5 to 2 inches out of the center, and I'm going to tear toward that bottom left corner. I want to create a really fun river running through the layout and really create some playful and fun elements with those otters. And in my mind, I'm thinking about the sentiment in the Utterly Amazing stamp set that says, we're cute together, like we are cute together. So Zachary and MJ are cute together. The otters are cute together. So instead of overthinking the very unique and specific theme of otters, you can think of it more like a family or nature or a couple or mommy and baby. There are so many different ways that you can go with this, but I will admit, when you first think about it and you see all of the busy otter patterns, it can stump you for a minute. And my immediate reaction was, ooh, I love the colors, and aren't those otters adorable? And I had the same reaction as my Papercrafters, but what do I have that'll go with this? You know, that's what a scrapbooker is always thinking about, like, what memory can I scrap? Now, I actually have a Papercrafter who's visiting otters, and so it's going to be perfect. And there might be a zoo where you might have otters. There might actually be some who actually truly do have otters, but the majority of people are going to be using something that's a little bit more relative and a little more abstract from the otters themselves. They're just a cute icon. We've done layouts in the past with penguins, with hedgehogs, with all kinds of little animals and critters, and they've made adorable layouts. And so there's no reason why the otters can't be just as adorable. So what I've done here is I've cut a 6 by 12, and I ended up going with the lighter blue pattern because I didn't feel like the more green pattern lent itself to Zachary's shirt and the blue jeans in the kids' photo. And I felt like because this color is also in the fauna background or the flora background, I think it's going to go great, and it's really going to lend itself to the lake water. Now, I want to use this die on that piece, and I want to cut some slits into the background paper so that I can cut the otters out with the dies and have the otters rest in the water, the river water, like they're poking their heads out, like they're actually submerged in the water and they're poking their heads out. It's actually quite genius the way that they created this die and made that work. So I'm just pulling out. So if you weren't paying attention on the 6 by 12 strip, I laid it to where it was going to fit perfectly so that the two pieces of the frame, the dot frame, would fit perfectly with the river running through it. And I trimmed off the excess off the back because there's there's some great otters on the back of that I'm going to be able to cut out with the dies. And I don't want to waste any of that pattern paper. So now I'm just experimenting because honestly, I'm making this up as I go as well. I sort of had a vision with how to make this work, but I've never actually used the dies before. So I think I want to have one of those dies like where the hump or the curve goes upward and one where the hump or curve goes downward. So it makes different looking waves or different looking water. So I'm going over to the die cutter and I'm going to die cut that out of that base piece. And then when I bring that back, then I'll see if those otters are going to fit inside that perfectly. So it takes me just a minute, and I must not realize I left the camera rolling when I went over to the die cutter. Oh my goodness, I must be getting tired. And so I love how they've created that so that it's interactive. So there's so many little things that you can do. I kind of am envisioning you might be able to make a walking path out of that too. The riverside pearls are like stones. They're like rocks, so they might make a really beautiful pebbled path. That might be for a whole nother layout. Either that or I can see myself making a companion page for this and doing something with those stones, the riverside gems. They're so pretty. They have kind of bluish pearl tint to them and they're very irregular. And so they look like real stones. So now I'm seeing if the two dies that I put on this pattern paper will work. And there's a couple ways I can go. I love his little feet with the pink paws. So I can have his head really down low and his little feet sticking out, or I can curl his tail around and just have his little head bobbing over the water. I love that. That is just so genius how they did that. And I think that's going to work perfectly. So I had originally made some pencil mark there so that I could trim off a little bit of the back, because the back has otters on the back that I'm going to be able to either fussy cut out or use the dies and cut them out. So you can fussy cut the otters out of the back, or you can get the die set and die cut those out of there as well. So I did go ahead and die cut the little couple with the foliage around them, because I think that will be really, really cute up by Zachary and MJ, hitting home the fact that we're going with the theme that we're cute together. So we don't have to have otters in our photo. We don't have to have went to a zoo and seen otters. We're just talking about cute little animals that look cute together. And it wouldn't matter if they were hedgehogs or little deer or two skunks. I think we've done layouts before with skunks. So it's that whole concept. So I kind of liked the idea of incorporating a little bit of vellum for some texture and to give it another different kind of texture in the water, and also to be able to make it look like the little otter's bottom half is under the water. Now, the designer of this suite or collection, actually not the designer, not the creator of the collection, but the artist who made the art for the upcoming, printables for this product drop on November 1st, did a little bit of shading and markering of a different color blue over the top of parts of the otters to make it look like they were underwater. But I kind of like the idea of just taking some real rough vellum and I tore 3 different strips here, and I'm just going to toggle those 3 strips across the water triangle. I'm going to adhere with a little bit of my fine tip glue pen on either side, and it does make the glue on the edge look a little darker, but it blends right into the blue wash of that blue triangle. So I'm just going to add those pieces, and then I'm going to pick those up and trim those off. It looks like I have quite a mess going on right now, but there's a method to my madness, and I do end up loving it. Just having the marble blue water in the background and then the texture with the torn vellum on the front of that. I'm sliding a little bit of that vellum into the slot so that it's sort of coming out of the water. And then when I put the otter in there, it's going to just look like those otters are bouncing in and out of the waves and of the water. And we actually do have beavers basically in our backyard in a body of water that flows, a river that flows through well, just like it's about an acre away, but it's in our, it flows through the river. And so we have a lot of beavers, and the otters kind of remind me of the beavers with them just poking their little heads out and they're busy doing their thing. Although otters really make me think more playful. Otters seem to be playful with each other. But now I'm actually just making sure that vellum is in place, and I'm getting happy with that. I know that it doesn't look like much yet, but I promise it's all going to come together. So now I'm going to put my liquid glue on my gutted frame. And I love the colors in this foliage, in all of this, the river leaves, and I have no idea what they're called. But flora, fauna, reeds, cattails would be really, really cute. You could cut some cattails on your Cricut or find a cattail die cut and stamp. It would be really, really cute with that. So adding the early espresso back, leaving a little edge of the early espresso, putting the river triangle across the bottom and adhering that in place, and then we'll put the frame back over the top in two pieces. And I think you're going to be happy. I ended up being really happy with it, but at this point in the video, I was like, what am I trying to do? Do you ever get yourself into those situations where you're trying to make your idea come to fruition? And I've seen lots of different cards like this. I've done lots of layouts, and many, many demonstrators have, where you make bodies of water in different ways. You make it with vellum, you make it with tearing, you make it with, cutting. You can make the waves on the Cricut. There is lots of ways. You can actually make them with inking and splattering. There are lots of ways to make it look like water in the background. Now, I had a little bit of a hard time matching up the blue, and I ended up going with Azure blue. And Azure blue wasn't one of the blues in the collection. I don't think so, unless I missed it. Let me look. Nope, Balmy Blue was part of it, Lost Lagoon was part of it, and Pool Party was part of it. But when I used those inks, I couldn't quite get them to work with the watercolor paper in the background. So I ended up going with the Azure Blue, and I felt like that was a good fit. It was just slightly darker than the wash paper, and I just used a little blending brush on the edges of both of the pieces where I tore. I added foam tape, so the river itself, the blue wash paper is flush, and then I popped up both of the frames. And I don't know at this point in the video if I've changed it to white yet. I can't quite tell. I think that I did, and maybe I didn't, but I do change it to a white circle frame instead of the very vanilla. I like the very vanilla, but as I got to working with it, I didn't feel like it popped as well. There, oh, that's so cute. I just love how his tail is kind of shaded under the vellum, and it does really, really make him look like he's underwater. And then I put the little baby on the bottom. There's two little slits that the die makes, a top slit and a bottom slit with a little space in between. So the resting otter I thought could be floating on his back on top, and then the little baby otter could be coming out. Now we're going to make a lot of leaves. We're going to make a lot of river weeds and leaves and flora and fauna. There's a log in there. There's longer ones. There's shorter ones. And there's stones. We're going to make some stones. We're going to make a couple logs. And I actually pulled out the Spotlight on Nature dies because I thought we're going to need some landing spots and a couple other little decorative elements, because the Sweet collections don't have stickers or punch outs. They have stamps and dies, which you can get great use out of. And I loved the die that cuts out the school of fish. And I thought maybe I would use a Spotlight on Nature circle and dye the fish, the school of fish, out of the bottom, and then back that with another color. Now, I actually tried to take some of the fish that I cut out singly and put those inside just to see what that would look like with the multicolors, and I actually ended up not liking it so much. I really like the muted river colors for this particular layout. I do like a little bit of pop of the Calypso coral, just because there's a little bit of coral in MJ's shirt. And then there's also little bits and pieces of Calypso coral throughout the pattern papers, but not too much. And so I end up backing that with a little bit of gray cardstock. And I'll link in the description all the colors that I used and all the materials and supplies that I used here. And it's just the Sweet collection. The Otterly Adorable Sweet collection has all of these pieces in it, but you can get them separately. Now, I actually got the textured Art of Texture stamp set out because it has lots of distressed background stamps. And I was experimenting actually off camera, and I ended up getting some ink on my vellum and on the lake or the river background. And so I had to strategically place a fish there. And so I'm just really fussing and playing around. I don't want too many fish in the river, but I do want a few fish in the river. So a couple really teeny tiny ones, a couple little medium ones, maybe two little small coral ones, not too much of bright colors, but just a few that are floating around in there with the cute little otters. And I'm already loving it. I think it's going to come together. We have a lot to do yet in terms of adding a lot of greenery and adding some stones, some logs, but I see a little scene right here. And so I fussed quite a bit with these, so I did speed this up quite a bit. But I thought we could add the log, we could add some stones, and then just add some, like it's just some little tufts of river weeds sticking up and river foliage sticking up, just like if you went down here to the river. There's all different kinds of flora and fauna, and there's fields and stones and wild grasses and all kinds of things that are growing around the river. And I love the log. I did struggle. I did create the logs in early Espresso and also a couple logs in pecan pie. And I don't end up using two logs on the bottom here. I end up going with a single early Espresso log, but I do end up needing some sort of elongated elements up at the top by the photo a little later, where I do use two logs up there. And I really love the detail in the log. Bits and pieces of it sort of pull apart. So if you used a lighter color, you could do some inking on the log and make it look very rustic. I didn't actually do much inking on the individual bits. A lot of times I will ink leaves, I will add that, but I just liked the blue, the tint of blue around the river, and then I do a little distress stamping up by the photo and a little tiny bit of inking, more inking up there, but I'm just basically fussing. So yeah, so my paper crafters, they were almost all unanimous. They were like, I don't know if I'll be doing that one because it's really, really cute, but I don't have any photos that would go with that. So I was brainstorming, and I mean, I do layouts all the time of my grandkids swimming, my kids and my grandkids swimming, and I'll make layouts that say swim like a fish, or, playful like, this or that. And it's like, really seriously, anything water would go with the otters, like camping and outdoorsy, boating, kayaking, I think fishing, even swimming in a swimming pool, even because you can do the play on the playful otters, just how you're. They're playing around. I remember we had a series in close to my heart called Sweet Safari, and it was all about the monkeys and the zoo animals. And there were tons of grandkid photos that I used on that had nothing to do with the monkeys and the animals. You could even do adventure stories. You could do reading books, and maybe you're reading books that have different animals in it, or you're reading a book about the river. So there's so much you could do, but I love the play on family. Cute little family. Like I could see me doing family photos here of like my daughter and her 3 girls. And here I'm showing how I've arranged some of those Spotlight on Nature circles up to the upper left. I've torn the sentiment that says, "We're cute together." And later I'm going to do the "Love you lots" sentiment as well. And these were probably small enough to be designed for cards, but I think they work just fine. You don't always have to have an enormous title on your layouts. So now I need another little landing spot here to anchor my bits on. I wasn't going to add another Spotlight on Nature, but I think I could do either some journaling or some additional stamping on that, so I can add some of the leaves around that. And I feel like it's sort of chunked up there. Like I need something longer, like a strip of paper or something longer that goes out to the right to stretch your eye, so your cluster isn't just chunked in one spot, that you have a little bit of length. So I decided to go with the 2 logs and add some stones. And then I'm going to do some second generation stamping with the blotch stamp in a couple different places. And it doesn't stamp perfect, but that's the beauty of blotch stamps. No one will be more the wiser. It doesn't need to be perfect. In fact, it's good if it isn't. And I actually end up stamping a couple spots with the blotch stamp, and then I stamp on the round white Spotlight on Nature die as well. I just keep forgetting to stamp off, and then I also need to be careful and clean my block because I'm around all my other bits. A lot of times it's much easier to do your stamping of your backgrounds if you just lay your pieces in place before you adhere them, and then add your stamping underneath, and then adhere your pieces down. But of course, I don't have the luxury to do that when I'm designing as I go for the camera, because I don't necessarily know what I'm doing, and I don't necessarily know. I have a basic idea usually, but I don't have a finished product in my mind, and I don't know how I'm going to pull it all together. And often I pull things out as I'm creating. So now I'm going to use the pretty Peacock ink over the top of the second generation, I think it's crumb cake, second generation crumb cake blotch. And then I've rubbed that with a little bit of that same Azure blue ink over the top, just to add that interest and color. And oh my gosh, it's so coming together and it's amazing. When I started out, I was like all my paper crafters, what am I going to do with these otters? But I do understand why Stampin' Up! Put so many hero papers and so many otter papers in the collection. It's because card makers will need lots and lots of icons. They're probably going to fussy cut most of them out, or die cut most of them out, or cut whole scenes for the backgrounds of cards. So I do understand why they did it, but for a scrapbooker, it could pose a bit of a problem toning down the busy otters. But I'm very happy. I'm getting very happy with this. I love the river running through. I love the color scheme. I love the cute little otters. And I love that we were able to make unusual or unique icons work for an everyday theme. Just my son and daughter-in-law sitting on some stones in front of the dam. And I think this worked perfectly. I hope you love it. And I hope I've sparked lots of ideas for the Otterly Adorable collection that will launch on November 1st. Stay tuned for more right here on Snips by Kelly.